So welcome to Mission Makers, Julia. I'm really excited to have you on the show today. We're sitting here at Amsterdam Dance Event in Soho House. Shout out to Soho House for letting us use your venue. But, to kick things off, we always like to kind of dive deeper into the meaning of our guest name. And so with that being said, Julia can mean youthful or dedicated to Jupiter. And the word karma, as I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know, is obviously related to fate and destiny. So with that being said, considering these profound meanings, how do you feel your name reflects your artistic journey and the path you've carved in the electronic music industry?
It's such a good question. When I was first starting, honestly, I got my first paid gig and I realized I didn't have a name, and I had been thinking about different names. So I started coming up with all these different names, but my real last name is Karma. And that was always obviously special to me for many reasons. So I figured I would keep that. And then as far as the first name, I thought of so many different things. In the end, it felt forced and that it was something that wasn't me. But Juliana is my real first name. And so Julia is actually sort of a nickname, but the reason it's spelled with a Y is because I'm Middle Eastern actually, and so, or my parents are, and the Y is kind of how it's supposed to be pronounced, like Julia, not Julia, and Juliana versus Juliana. So it kind of has some tie with that. And yeah, I think like it's been interesting too with your second question around how it's impacted my artist career. There's definitely a connection with what I feel when you're doing something that you're supposed to be doing and you're working hard doing what you're supposed to be doing, that if things are opening up and doors are opening, for me, I felt like that started to happen really early, where I started, doing it for fun, and then all of a sudden one door would open and, opportunities would just happen. I'm like, okay, and I would lean into that. And I felt very early on that it was some signs that it felt like I was just supposed to be doing this.
Interesting. What were some of those signs, if I may ask?
It would just be things like that almost seemed lucky. Like someone would invite me to, when I first moved to New York, and someone would invite me to something, and I would go, and just so happens to be an owner of the club. A club is there, and I'm like, oh, perfect, because I just started. I don't know anyone, so I'll introduce myself. Just little things like that, but over and over, where it felt like I was in the right place at the right time. It's hard to explain, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, yeah, I feel like when you kind of are on your path of purpose, like things start to align and magnetize, and the stronger you resonate at that, like the more it just kind of naturally comes to your way, without like kind of chasing it in an unnatural way, maybe. Although obviously there is something to be said about the chase and the hustle, obviously.
Oh yeah, definitely. But it's one of those things that you can put your energy and your hustle into so many things.
Yeah.
And you might see that return on that hustle in different ways. But it feels like, I've always been very hardworking, but it felt like when I was leaning into this that I was just seeing so many things open up. Yeah.
Nice. Well, that's exciting. And so reflecting, obviously it's quite nice to kind of just go back to the beginning a little bit. And so reflecting on your earlier days, what are some of the most important things you think your fans or our listeners should sort of know about your childhood that really shaped who you are today?
Well, I would say that I'm an eldest child, which comes as any eldest child knows, with certain personality traits. And I always had a lot of initiative, and I was extremely independent. Growing up, I kind of moved away from my parents on my own and decided to kind of be independent, pay for my own university and find a job and figure things out on my own. I have a great relationship with my parents, but I wanted to just do things by myself. I didn't want someone to help me, which is interesting at like 19. But the initiative that I had early on at like 19, I moved to San Francisco. I went to college there. This is not really childhood, but it's kind of youth. And moving there and figuring it out in a very expensive city. I was a waitress at a restaurant and paying for college. It was
not cheap in America.
Wasn't cheap, yeah. So hustling really early, and that sort of like, yeah, eldest child thing was really powerful for me. That sort of independence, need to spread my wings. I still feel like I have that. So
And how many siblings do you have?
I have two. My brother is 5 years younger than me, and we're really close. And then I have a sister who's 15 years younger than me. So she's like baby basically, and we're close in a different way.
Yeah, of course.
But everyone always thought I was like her mom somehow, and I'd take her. But yeah, and another thing that's I'd say different from my childhood is because I grew up in California, in America, but culturally my parents are Middle Eastern.
Which part of the Middle East?
Kind of mixed, but it was all one area, I guess, at some point, but mainly Lebanese. Okay. Yeah.
Amazing. Have you played in Lebanon?
No, I've been, but I hopefully will play soon. It would be a full circle moment. I went in 2018 with my family. It was just the best trip. But yeah, sort of because of that, I'm sure a lot of people can relate when you're in a country, but your roots are from somewhere else, and you're kind of mixed. You feel like you don't really fit in one way or the other. So I've talked a lot about this, but like, you know, I'm American because I'm American, but if I go to Lebanon or something, I'm not I'm an outsider, but I also felt like an outsider in America, because yeah, I could speak Arabic, and my mom's making me hummus sandwiches to school, not peanut butter and jelly. It was like, if you've seen My Big Fat Greek Wedding, it's one of my favorite movies. I was like that girl in the school, so kind of like the weird one. But yeah, other interesting things that I guess shape who I am today, that I don't really think there's one way to do anything. I think there's not one box to fit in, and really there's like endless dimensions in between. So.
And I know you played the piano in your childhood, so like what did that mean to you at that time?
Yeah, I started playing really early, like 6 or 7. My parents told me to take lessons. I almost said forced. I didn't necessarily want to, but I'm glad that they did. I took lessons for about 7 years, and then when I started high school, I quit. I wanted to quit. I told my parents because I wanted to have a social life in high school, and I was too busy with piano. And I was playing a lot of classical music, and I really didn't like it at the time. Now I love classical music. So yeah, but I stopped, and I was still playing for fun, but I ended up playing a lot of just like jazz and like musicals, like basically themes from Disney movies, stuff like that. So yeah, that really shaped me and my family. My brother, I taught him to play piano, and my sister dances, sings, plays piano. But my parents don't. They just forced it on us. I'm very happy they did.
Yeah, it's a great skill, obviously, for production.
Yeah.
And so how did you first discover electronic music, and how far along that discovery point then did you decide that this was, you know, what you wanted to pursue as a career?
I would say when I was probably 17 or so, I started listening to, as a lot of people I know, especially in the US, started listening to like more like, yeah, I was really a big fan of Avicii. I was a really big fan of Swedish House Mafia and those types of artists really early on.
Saying like 2010s kind of period.
Yep. Yeah. 2009, 2010, 2011, I'd say. And I was just listening a lot before Spotify. I don't even remember what I was listening. I guess I would buy songs, or I'd rip songs off LimeWire. I don't remember. And kind of dating myself. And then, yeah. And then from there, I hadn't really like gone to like electronic music show or club or anything until, actually, no, I had a fake ID also when I went to San Francisco. I don't know if that's allowed to say, but.
I had a fake ID. My first club was age 15 in London.
Yeah, I had a fake ID, and then I would go to these like sort of clubs in San Francisco, and I loved clubbing, the clubbing culture, the nightlife culture. I was like, this is amazing. But then the first time I really went to see a big artist was I was 20. It was like my 21st birthday, and I did this like stereotypical thing and went to Las Vegas. And it was a very, different experience, but I went to XS to see Avicii, who I'd been a big fan of for such a long time. And I was just mesmerized the whole time, totally starstruck. And that was my first nightlife experience. And then I took a break for a while. I'd always been listening to, I got like into Calvin Harris, and that was sort of the start. And And then my first festival was Coachella. That was in 2016 that I went. And actually later that year is when I decided that I wanted to make music and DJ.
So were you DJ first and then production came along, or was it similar?
I decided I want to do both at the same time. I just couldn't figure out which one to start with. It's a lot. So I'm like, what do I do first? I thought that I wanted to produce first. I figured if I produced first, it'd make me a better DJ. So I started with production technically because I bought a keyboard, I bought Logic, and I started playing around. I probably spent a few months on it, but I wasn't spending enough time, so it wasn't so serious. And then I was like, okay, well, this is really great, but it's a very like intensive thing, and I was in a very extroverted time of my life for many reasons. So I thought, well, why don't I switch to DJing, and I'll come back to this later now that I kind of understand some basic stuff. So from there, I taught myself how to DJ because I like met a friend in San Francisco who DJs, a couple friends, and they were like encouraging me, like, go, figure it out. And I bought like a DDJ 1000 and spent every week in my room from then on, like DJing just in my bedroom, sending videos to my boyfriend at the time, like, look, I did this transition. And that's kind of how it started. All of it was just really because I loved it so much, and I was starting to go out a lot in San Francisco, different clubs, and expanding my musical knowledge, a lot more progressive and even tech house too there. And then it wasn't until I moved to New York that things really picked up.
So how's it going now? Is it kind of where you were like, was that this where you are today? Obviously it's hard, like you never know what's going to happen, but like this kind of sonic direction, the brands that you're associated with, was that the target? Was that the vision?
I'd say originally I didn't have a specific vision. I was actually I wanted to DJ in front of people. Yeah. That was my first goal. Yeah. And when I started playing in New York, the clubs I had gotten in touch with were booking different style than what I play now, a little bit. And so I kind of catered that sound. I was playing a little bit more Afro house, a little bit more, kind of organic. Which was a new genre for me to explore. So I did that for a little bit. Those who followed me from the beginning probably saw those sets. And after COVID hit, actually, I started doing live streams, and then I started to incorporate what is like more, I guess, my sound, more in a general direction of what I wanted to play because I wasn't catering to clubs anymore. And then after COVID, that really actually changed the course of everything because I started playing what I wanted to play, and then when COVID started fizzling out a little bit, I started getting gigs that made more sense for what I wanted to play.
Interesting. Yeah. And so then what were some of the roadblocks that you faced along the way? Like you've mentioned that you obviously moved cities as well, from San Francisco to SF to New York. Yeah. And obviously that means starting fresh with your network and, all of those things. Yep. And then in tandem with that, then what were some of the most important turning points? And I think you alluded to COVID actually being one of those turning points. If you want to hear the rest of our conversation, then head over to Spotify, Apple, or wherever else you get your podcasts.